Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the for global financial settings. Okay, so we will be covering whole series of those settings. So in that, the first topic would be fiscal year variant. We are going to discuss. Okay, so this was the question in our last session. Which fields of the company code are non-modifiable? So once you are having the posting in the company code, you cannot modify the company code key itself, which you give for your company and the country. Okay, so these are non-modifiable to ensure the data consistency in the system. And these are the topics we are going to explore. What is the structure of the fiscal year variant, year dependent, year independent, calendar, non-calendar, short, and fiscal year. So these are the various types of fiscal year we will be seeing in the SAP. Okay, so let's start with our main content. Okay, so start with the financial accounting global settings. First topic, fiscal year variant. So in the fiscal year variant, this year is important. We all know that what year represents. So what year represents actually a period of 12 months. We all know generally. Okay, and what is the fiscal year we can define? Okay, so let me write it. You can define the fiscal year as a period of 1 year used by any company or government. Okay, and this particular year is used by the company or the government for what? For financial reporting and budgeting. Okay, so for that purpose we are having the fiscal year in any organization. Okay, so next, if you see in SAP, the accounting year of any company is known as the fiscal year. Okay, so let me write it in SAP. Accounting year for any company is known as fiscal year. Okay, and we all know in year we are having the months. Okay, so in SAP there are like not the months, but we know these months with the name of periods. Okay, these are not particularly months. Okay, but these are equivalent to the months. We will see how these differs from the month in this particular session. Okay, so in SAP year is having periods. Okay, and these are not named by the months, okay, in a year. And another thing you have to remember that fiscal year is defined in SAP as a variant. Okay, so fiscal year is defined as variant, and that is why it is known as fiscal year variant. Okay, so that is the reason we call it the fiscal year variant in SAP. So now the important thing comes up. What is this fiscal year variant? So up to here we have already seen that in the SAP we define any year with the variant only. Okay, and that is the fiscal year variant. So what do we mean by the fiscal year variant and how it is defined? We are going to see the structure of this fiscal year variant. So basically it is a two character alphanumeric key. Okay, and this particular alphanumeric key is defined at the client level. So what does mean of the client level is it is available across all company code in that particular client. Okay, so once you are defining any fiscal year, it is not restricted to any particular company code. Okay, and what does this fiscal year in SAP actually? It defines the structure of year, like number of periods a year would be having, and like start and end date of the year. Okay, so basically this fiscal year variant will be telling how much periods one particular year would be having in the SAP and what would be the start date of that year or the end date of the year. Okay, so normally if we see there are 16 periods. Okay, so there are 16 periods normally, out of which 12 are normal and 4 are special periods. Okay, so these periods might vary year to year or as per the requirement of the organization. Okay, and you have to remember one thing here is in this, for example, uh, here in the special periods, the special period actually starts from the 13th. Okay, so up to 12th we are having the normal period, and from the 13th the special period starts. Okay, so from 13th to 16th normally we define it the special period. Okay, so what is the need of this special period? These special period are mainly used for the mainly year end adjustments. Okay, so there are the various type of adjustments you have to do at the year end. For that we need the special periods. Okay, so what kind of adjustment these can be? Adjustment might be related to, for example, you have paid amount for the next year in advance. Okay, so for that you will have to make the adjustment to record that expenses in the correct year. Okay, so now we will be seeing the various types of the fiscal years, okay, in SAP. So let me give here the chart. So in SAP, basically, we are having the three types of the fiscal year. Number one is the year independent, and then we are having the year dependent, and then we are having the shortened fiscal year. So under the year independent, we are again having the calendar year and then the non-calendar year. Okay, so now we have to understand what does year independent year, okay, year independent means. Okay, so we have to write year independent fiscal year. Okay, so what do we understand by the year independent fiscal year? So let me define it. A fiscal year having same number of periods and posting periods always start and end on the same day, on the same date. I would write same date of the year. Okay, so what does it mean? For example, once you define any year, it would be same, okay, across multiple years. So at from the configurational point of view, it remains unchanged. Okay, so there is from the configurational point, there is no change. Okay, and it remains uniform. Now next comes the year dependent. Okay, so let me write it, year dependent fiscal year. So what is this? It is a fiscal year having varying periods. Okay, and start and end date. So what is the meaning of this? For example, you might have the year which is not having the same number of periods, okay? And start and the end date might be differing. Okay, so for example, we can see, for example, in 2025, we were having 12 periods in the fiscal year. But now the requirement in 2026 is they they want the 13 period. Okay, so in 2026 user need 13 periods. So it simply means that the number of period are differing across two different year, like 2025 and 26. So it is known as the year dependent. It is changing by the year. Okay, and we can take like the real example also from like another example which in reality happens. Actually, for example, let's suppose there is a requirement that the user want their, for example, their financial statements are closing on 31st, like this, at the end of the March. Okay, and their fiscal year is starting from the 1st of April. Okay, but their requirement is कि they have to close their financial statement at the last Friday of the March of each year. Okay, so what would happen? For example, the last Friday each year in the March would be falling on different dates. Okay, or the varying dates. So in that case also we are having the year dependent fiscal year. Okay, so simply means that the fiscal year would be differing and it cannot be same. Okay, so from the configurational point of view, we can say it is created individually for each year. Okay, now next comes the uh, calendar year and the non-calendar year. So these are again the part of this year independent. Let me put here. So firstly we will give the calendar year. Okay, so what do we understand by the calendar year? So periods, we can simply write periods that align with the months of the year. Okay, so what does it mean? For example, the year basically starts from the Jan. So Jan is considered as 1 and December is considered as 12th period. So in that case, a year would be calendar year. Okay, because our periods are directly aligned with the month of the period. Okay, or month of the year. Okay, so next we are having the non-calendar. Non-calendar year. So in the non-calendar, it is simply the reverse of the above. Okay, year actually start in the other month of the year other than the January. For example, if you see, for example, let me write it. In India, financial starts from April. Okay, so and it's and in March of next year. Okay, so in this case, our year in SAP is the non-calendar year. Okay, because the first period of the year would be April. Okay, but in the calendar year, our first period is the January. So the period which are starting from the Jan would be the calendar year, and the period which are starting from any other like any other of the month, okay, apart from the January, then that would be known as the non-calendar year. Okay, and there is a one another important thing which we have to remember in this non-calendar year. Okay, so for example, what is happening here is our year is starting, let's suppose, uh, in 2025, 2020, let's okay 4 only. Our year starts 1st of April 2024 to 31st 31st of March 2025. Okay, so this is the fiscal year, okay, for India actually. So here what is happening is some of the period are falling in 2024 and the last three period, Jan, Feb and March are falling in the year 2025. Okay, so in that case, what we use the concept of year shift. Okay, year shift. So what is year shift? In SAP, there is a functionality where we try to align the periods which are falling in the next period to the current one. Okay, so for that basically we majorly use -1 against those period which are falling in the succeeding year. Okay, so we will see this particular part in our practical session while we will be doing the configuration of the fiscal year. And there is also +1 which is also used for the other purpose. We will also be seeing that in our practical session itself. Okay, and the next is in this series shortened. Okay, so what is shortened? Shortened fiscal year. So what do we understand by this shortened fiscal year? Let me write it here. Year year which is having less than 12 periods. So any year in SAP which is having less than 12 periods is known as the shortened fiscal year. So what can be the scenarios where we are having the shortened fiscal year? So the major example is which actually applicable in this scenario is merger and acquisition. Okay, so let's suppose you are having any entity, okay, and you acquire the another entity in the mid of the year, okay, and they were supposed following the calendar year, okay. So if you acquired any other entity in the mid of the years, let's suppose in June, then you have to reconcile the financial statement. So in that case, you would be having year only of the 6 or 7 month. Okay, so in that case we would be having the shortened fiscal year. Okay, and now another important thing which you have to take care. Okay, so there are some of the standard variant for the years that are available in SAP. Okay, so these are K4 and V3 and V9. There are other also, but these are the majorly used. Okay, so what is this K4? It is a standard calendar fiscal year with four special periods. So if you take the real-time example, in Germany we use the K4. Okay, so it is a basically calendar year with the uh, let me correct it, special period. Okay, with four special periods. Okay, and now V3 is nothing but a year from April to March of next year. Okay, and it is standard in the countries like India, UK, okay, etc. And then we next having the V9. Okay, the year which start from October and end in September of the following year. So the country which use this year are like US, United States. Okay, so these are the points which you have to remember. Okay, and next we will see the path actually of the, okay, so here I'm writing the path we would be utilizing in our practical session, okay, while we will be doing the configuration Okay, so what is the path? So there are two things. First is the creation. Let me write it. Creation of the fiscal year, and the other is mm, assigning assignment to company code. Okay, as I told you earlier that the creation of the fiscal year is at the client level. Okay, so whatever the fiscal year variant you are creating, it has to be assigned to the company code in order to utilize it. Okay, so to define it, we are having one particular path. The path is SPRO, okay, reference IMG, and then we are having financial accounting, global settings. Okay, just I'm writing short form, and then the ledgers, and then we are having fiscal year and posting periods, and then finally maintain fiscal year variant. Okay, and in our previous videos I have told you multiple times, for each path we are also having the shortcut, which is also known as the T code or the transaction code. So what is the transaction code is OB29. Okay, you can directly jump to the screen of the creation of the fiscal year using the T code OB29. Okay, for the assignment we are also having the path. Okay, and up to here, let me copy it. Let me copy. So up to here we are having the same. Okay, and then just you have to click on assign company code to fiscal year variant. Okay, so this is the path. Okay, and again we are having the T code for this. The T code is OB37. Okay, so I think this is the brief of our session on the fiscal year variant, the theoretical part. In the next session, we would be discussing about the practical or the configuration the system we would be seeing. But before that, we would be jump onto our question section. So the first question is, can two company codes share one fiscal year variant? So I think I have already told you what the answer would be, because I told you that this fiscal year variant is defined at the client level, so it can be used by any number of the company code in the client. So the answer is yes. Okay, so the next question is, which I want to give the answer in the comment section. Can one company code have multiple? This is little bit complex, but not very much. You have to give the answer of this question in the comment section. Okay, can one company code have multiple fiscal year variants? That's all for today. Thank you. We will be meeting in our next session of the configuration.